Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Journey in Boots from Trauma to Triumph. I'm your co-host, Dorothy Odell, producer of Unstoppable Overcomers Productions, and we have the amazing co-host, Dr. Jay Royster, owner and founder of Semper Modis. You want to share a little bit about what Semper Modis does, Dr. Jay, please?
Sure. Actually, our guest is part of Semper Modis as well. He has his own private practice, but we kidnap him from time to time when we need him in a certain state. So it's pretty amazing. I just want to let the audience know I do have a storm here. I am in Florida. We got the lovely, hurricane coming and a tornado warning. So if I disappear, that's why. But I've known John for many years, and to serve those who serve should be like, he should wear one of those necklaces that say that, because this man is just unbelievably, the humility and the genuineness that I have seen. And I've known this man for years. I've been waiting, but I haven't seen anything but service. So welcome, Mr. Cothron. So happy to have you here. And you're on the doctoral journey with me, which I appreciate. Yes. Well, I'm on my second one because I didn't learn from the first one, apparently. So let's talk about you, sir. I'd like you to raise your camera and show those photos of where you came from, which is pretty awesome. Look at that.
Yeah, so the top flag is my grandfather's, and the one behind me it's actually my left is my dad's, and that one is my mother's. And then the two small pictures in the middle are my in-laws, and there's my dad on that side there. And then behind my head is my daughter Amanda, my son Joshua, my other son Michael, which there's a glare on his picture, so it's kind of hard to see. And on the bottom is my son Jeremy, and behind me here is my daughter-in-law Tyler, and she was a Marine, so we forgive her for that.
Just 3 generations of service. How awesome is that?
Wow.
Well,
now
we know
goosebumps.
Yeah.
Like,
now
seriously.
we know where you came from. Have you always been a Floridian, or have you ventured down?
Born in Winter Haven and raised in Jacksonville.
Wow. So what made you decide that you're going to, follow the legacy and serve?
Part of it was my mom. She kept pressing me. Actually, she pressed me to go in the Marine Corps. So me and
you were a good Marine. I see that.
Me and a good friend of mine at the time, we went down to the recruiter station and in 1985, all the recruiters were in one building for all the different services. And we go into the Marine and we're talking to them, and the Marine recruiters ask them for high school diplomas. I was like, here. And my buddy was like, I have a GED. And the recruiter was like, sorry. Nope, you have to have a high school diploma. And as we're walking out down the hallway, the Army recruiter is standing in the door, and he goes, we take GEDs.
I love that. That's awesome.
And we were going to go in on the buddy program, and then my friend decided to duck out at the last second.
You just didn't go in at all?
Nope. I think maybe a couple of years later he tried to, but he didn't even make it through boot camp. So.
Oh, wow. But you did with swimmingly, I'm assuming.
Well, I was able to do more push-ups by the time I was done.
Yeah. I think that's true for all of us, even in the Air Force, my whopping 10 a day, which I never did in high school. So it was different for me. But I do remember them being in the building. And I remember there was one building, and it was a long corridor, and it had offices to the side. And the first one on the left was Marine. Second one was the Army. Then there was like the bathroom and a couple things in the center. And then on the right side, you continued walking. There was a Navy, and all the way down at the end was the Air Force. So I do remember walking those halls.
Yeah. My dad, he was in the U.S. Army Air Corps in World War II. And then when they transitioned in 48 from the Air Corps to the Air Force, of course, he transitioned. He retired in 65.
Oh, wow. And your mother was in for?
She was in the Women's Army Corps for about 3 years during World War II.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's amazing. So
So,
you
yeah.
did not make 45-degree hospital corners way before you went to basic,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yes. Yes. My mom had me making those in my bed before high school.
Wow. So
Get
going
on,
into
Mom.
basic training was no change for you.
Oh, that part was easy. It was all the push-ups and sit-ups and everything else that was more difficult.
So where was your first permanent duty station?
Fort Riley, Kansas. I
Oh,
got
that
there
had to
and
be a change, Mr. Floridian.
yes. And here's the reason why the change was so huge.
Mm.
Because we graduated basic training in November. Got to go home for Thanksgiving and then had to head straight to Kansas. And when I got to the parking lot at the barracks, there was like 3 feet of snow on the ground.
Oh, yeah. So it's much different than Florida.
Yep. So
Wow.
first duty station was in Kansas from 1985 to 1990.
And then where?
And then I went to Germany
Oh, how
and
was
spent
that?
3 years. What's that?
How was that?
Oh, Germany. I loved Germany. It was really fun. I was stationed in a place called Gelnhausen in 418 Infantry. And then we went to Desert Storm. And when we came back, they were closing our caserne. So I got shifted from Gelnhausen to Baumholder. That was not as much fun, but what do you do? And then from Baumholder, Germany, I got orders to go to, I got orders to go to Fort Polk, Louisiana. And I had heard horrible stories about Fort Polk. So I had stopped in at Fort Knox to visit a friend of mine. And he told me that there was a unit of infantry on Fort Knox. And so I went to the strength manager at Fort Knox to say, hey, I'm an 11 Mike. You guys are transitioning from the 113s to the Bradleys. So what can you do? So he got a hold of the Department of Army, and the guy at the Department of Army said, tell that E5 to just stay put until his orders are amended. He's not going to Fort Polk. He's going to Fort Hood, Texas.
Okay.
So
what's an 11 Mike for those civilians listening out there?
11 Mike was at the time was specific to the Bradley fighting vehicle, which is a pretty tall armored transport equipped with a 25 millimeter gun on it and a coaxial machine gun and firing ports out the side, a missile launcher.
Like fun.
So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Then you got stuck at Fort Hood.
I did.
The Army. Yay.
Well, yeah, I got stuck at Fort Hood from, when did I get there? 1993. And then I went to Master Gunner School for the Bradley in 94. And then in 96, I met my wife and we got married in 97. And after we got married, she was like, okay, I think it's time for us to go somewhere. Where can we go? So I listed all these different places. I was like, we can go to Hawaii. We can go to Colorado. We can go to Washington. And she was like, no. And I was like, well, I can always go to drill sergeant duty. And she was like, no, I think we'll stay here. 2 weeks later, I got a notice from the Army that I was going to go be a drill sergeant. So I blame that on her.
Exactly.
She should have just not asked anything. But I spent 3 years at Fort Jackson, South Carolina on drill sergeant duty. My last year, I served as a drill sergeant instructor. And then back to Fort Hood.
So what was your favorite station?
Wow. It would have to be a toss-up between Fort Hood and Germany. And the reason why Fort Hood would be one of my favorite is just simply because that's where I met my wife, and we've been married now for over 27 years.
Congratulations. So how did you meet her? Just curious.
Well, funny you should ask. My roommate and I and a couple of other friends had taken a road trip to Virginia because we'd just come back from the National Training Center in Fort Irwin, California. I think we were gone for like 4 to 6 weeks. So we came back, we went to Virginia, and we're on the way back. And in Mississippi, we get rear-ended, and I was asleep on the floor, and I had a gash across my eye and a big old black eye, 11 days of beard on my face. And when we got back home, it was almost time to, it was getting close to the evening time. So we got cleaned up, took off, went down to this place called Cody's, which was basically was a dance hall. And so I go in, and my XO's there, and he's like, "Hey, John," he goes, "You still got your girlfriend?" I was like, "No." He's like, "I got somebody you need to meet." I was like, "Really? Like, come on, man." And he was like, "No, no, no." He goes, "Look," he says, "she doesn't want anything from you. She just wants somebody that she can go hang out with, maybe dance with, go to a movie, no big deal." And I was like, all right. So he introduced us, and then we talked like the rest of the night. And then I got her phone number and asked her out. And so the first time when we started going out, it was, "I will meet you wherever we go, and I will pay for my own stuff." So I was like, "Oh, this is a deal." It didn't take too long until she asked me to start picking her up and paying for stuff. So,
I love that. I figured when you said you got rear-ended, she was the one that rear-ended you, but that's not how the story went. So
Oh,
that's why I
no.
laughed. In my head, I was just visualizing this.
And we got rear-ended in Mississippi. Some kid it was like 5 a.m. and some kid and his friend they had to have been doing about 90, 95 miles an hour down the highway. And he was trying to get home because it was his mom's car, and it was almost time for her to go to work.
Ooh.
And he had been out all night. And I'm like, "Well, you're not making them now," because he totaled her car.
Kids.
Yep. Kids. But after I got back from drill sergeant duty, excuse me, went to work for 3 Corps at Fort Hood, and then they sent me to Kuwait for 6 months. And the end of my time in Kuwait was just after 9/11. So when I got back from Kuwait, the Army decided that be in their best interest to send me to Korea.
Wow.
So, but I had to wait for like a year before I went to Korea. And then I let my smart mouth get in the way, so I didn't go where I should have gone. I went where the sergeant major wanted me to go.
You'll eventually learn, I'm sure.
Well, I did learn a lesson. Even if the sergeant major can't do anything locally, you don't challenge what he can do outside of the local, because they know people.
Yeah, they do. They are well connected. So,
Yeah.
Did you pursue your education while you were serving, or did you wait until you retired?
I pursued a little bit while I was in. I did some tuition assistance, get some of the basic stuff out of the way. And then after, was I retired already? Yeah. After I retired, I was working for a contractor, and I was taking some classes, but I would take a class or two and then I'm bored. And finally, my wife, she was like, "Hey," she goes, "why don't you get your degree in what you're actually interested in?" So I got a degree in Ministerial Studies from Hobe Sound Bible College here in Florida. And I went straight through 4 years of that. And then as a contractor, while I was working in Kuwait, I was in Kuwait for 2 years, and our marriage was really suffering. So we went to counseling, and that helped. And I was like, well, okay, like might try that, because all this traveling around with doing government contract work was really starting to wear thin. So I, as soon as I got the opportunity, I did the vocational rehab program with the VA and jumped on the counseling and got that done in 3.5 years, 2.5.
Yeah, I did mine in 2.5 as well. So you found value as the person being counseled.
Yes,
He must have been a good therapist.
he was.
That's awesome.
He was a good therapist. He helped us, at the time that we needed it, and pointed us in the right direction. And we're still here. So, and that was in 2011. Yeah.
So now that you're a licensed mental health counselor, licensed professional counselor, because each state has different abbreviations.
Yes.
So in North Carolina, where John is licensed certified professional counselor, because
Licensed clinical mental health counselor.
Mental, yeah, they got all kinds of, they switched it. It used to be LCPC. They switched it to the
Right.
LCMHC.
Yes.
Anyway, that's what all those abbreviations are for, just different licenses in different states. But
Right.
My question to you is, when did you start recognizing the post-traumatic stress symptoms, and how did you start dealing with those?
Oh, wow. Let me see.
Well, I was going to do this.
I actually started noticing the symptoms when a good friend of mine and his wife came to visit, and we all went out to Ponce Inlet over on the East Coast, just south of Daytona.
Right.
And we're out there, and we're just kind of hanging around. All of a sudden, I hear this pop, 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 sounded like a machine gun, and my anxiety level went through the roof. Never happened before.
Right.
And so I'm looking around, and I see a tour helicopter taking off, and I was like, okay, that's a good one, because when I heard that, and when we went to Desert Storm afterwards, we were set up on a checkpoint, and we were outside of a town called Al-Nazaria, which was maybe a football field away from us, not very far. And but even though we were on a ceasefire, the Shiite Muslims were fighting with the Republican Guard. So there were bullets flying 24/7 in that town. And we were standing on a checkpoint. My unit commander had taken all of our ammo back from us. So we were standing on a checkpoint with empty magazines in the weapons, just trying to look, like we had something. So that was kind of scary. But it's been to the point lately where the more crowded places are getting, like even going into the stores, I'm like, I can do it, but I'm looking all over the place. So, and what I did about it, still working on that a little bit, but I did do some.
Don't call me for that, sir. I can take care of it. You know this.
Yeah. Well, I don't want the VA to find out. But
the VA watches the show.
Oh, that's cool.
You're right.
I'm not rated with PTSD by the VA anyway yet. But no, I've done some accelerated resolution therapy to work on some of that. And
what is that?
Accelerated resolution therapy has its basis in EMDR. So if anybody out there doesn't know what that is, it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And it involves bilateral stimulation of the brain by using your hand or an object for the eyes to track while you revisualize the traumatic event. But then with accelerated resolution therapy, the key with that is when the emotions come up, you focus on the emotion, you switch from the event to the emotion, and you still use the eye movements to get the emotion to dial back down. So, and that's helped. And I've not experienced trip so much yet. However, I
You
have
did get
used it quite a
trained in it.
bit.
Yes.
I have used
So,
it quite a bit with some very good success.
what is TRIP?
So trip, gosh, it, I keep forgetting the acronym.
Trauma recovery
Yes,
intervention
it's the R
program.
that gets me because
Recovery.
usually, yeah, recovery, but my brain goes to reconciliation or
Right.
reconsolidation.
That's what
But
happens when you're trained in so many different modalities. They mush all together.
yeah, I know, especially when one of them is reconsolidation of traumatic memories. So,
Very true. So trauma recovery intervention protocol.
right, which I've used that with some really good success, which it, to kind of explain it, it involves a visualization of the event, but not where the individual who experienced it is watching it. Another character, really,
Dog.
my dogs. So you can utilize like a cartoon character, a celebrity, your animal, whoever, to watch the event on the television behind you. But the scene also sets with a little bit of NLP,
Mm-hmm.
utilizing like what's the favorite smell, and music and food and things like that to actually get the participant into the scene itself as far as being present there.
Well, the reason I created it is because most of the time when you're dealing with someone in that trauma situation, the brain doesn't understand chronology. So I
Right.
created something that separates you from the event, trying to pull in all the positive senses and distract you from what you're actually suffering from so that you can alleviate it.
Yes.
That was the biggest challenge of pulling them onto the other hemispheres of the brain with numbers. And there's a lot to it and breaking it down. But yeah, I taught John about, I want to say 2021, right? 22.
Yeah, 21 or 22.
And you've been, but it's interesting to target specific individuals. Like, what is the best trauma intervention for this person? I always say on the show, like, if you need to ride a unicorn and sing Kumbaya, like, go forth, because it doesn't matter. Like, whatever you need to do to help you. But yeah,
Right.
this is something I developed just because it's quick and dirty, man. It
Yeah.
disconnects, makes them feel that things are farther away at best, and then we can actually completely disconnect from it. But
Yeah.
John called me this week and he was telling me a success story from Trip, and I was like, want to be on the show? But I did
Yep.
use it on your wife.
Yes, you did, and it was amazing.
Yeah,
It was amazing. She drove through a storm, and it terrified of storms because she had been she years ago she had been standing against a forklift, and lightning hit the forklift. So,
Wow.
so she'd been terrified of lightning ever since. And after Dr. Royster used Trip on her, she was outside walking while it was starting to lightning. And so I was like, oh, let me go get her. Not because I was worried about her being scared of the lightning. I was worried about her getting soaking wet and getting sick. So I drove to get her, and she was like, oh, you didn't have to do that. I was like, well, it's starting to rain and it's lightning. And she was like, you know what? I didn't even think about it.
Yep.
And then when
That's awesome.
she was coming to meet me at one of the SOF missions events, she was driving through a storm, just driving along, and then all of a sudden she realized, like, wait a minute, I'm driving in the middle of a storm. So she called Dr. Royster and was like, what did you do? Which is funny because that's what that one client of mine said. He was like, what kind of magic did you do to me?
I get voodoo a lot. And I'm like, no, it's not voodoo. It just is. But what's interesting when you work with the brain and you give it a solution to the problem, it's amazing how it reacts to it. And then they're like, well, it feels more distant right now. And it's
that's like, okay. So if it feels a little bit closer, we'll do it again.
Right. Yeah,
No
some
big
people
deal.
are extremely receptive to it. I think Right now I'm sitting with, I think a couple hundred people, and it's easily 98% success.
Right.
And you're at 100%. So we like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so far, everybody that I've used Trip with they have maybe needed one more, but typically it's kind of one and done. And even if it doesn't completely resolve, everything, they found that it's a lot easier to deal with stressful situations.
Yeah.
And I like how you put it with the solution piece, because I do tell all my clients when they start talking about, well, I'm get anxious and they're like, these negative emotions, and I'm like, stop, like it's an emotion,
Right.
Period. I said, and that's your body trying to direct you to something that requires a solution.
Yes.
And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. I was like, and the crazy thing is sometimes the solution is simply, it's out of my control.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you realize something's out of your control and there's nothing you can do about it, then the body says, okay.
And most of the time, people, the anxiety piece is fear of the unknown, and the unknown is what hasn't happened yet. So why are you stressing about a possibility of, depending on your decisions? Like, where really is the fear coming from? Because it's the fear of not knowing. It's like, that doesn't make sense. You're not anxious because of what is happening right now, you sitting in the chair. So why would you be anxious if something hasn't happened yet?
Yep.
I always, pull those questions. But you have, had significant success in the mental health field, and you have a business in Claremont, Florida.
Yep.
So tell us about you developing, what made you decide, because when I was in school, I was terrified of doing a private practice. Even though I had run businesses in the past, I was very, very worried about how this would all go.
Well, I was actually working in Orlando. Where I interned at as a student is where I stayed for my registered internship, and then I got licensed while I was there. But the practice owner had expanded the practice to the point where we had, something around 20 therapists, but only 12 office spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of hit or miss, but I was literally seeing like maybe 6 to 10 people a week. And I was driving from Orlando all the way into, or from Claremont all the way into Orlando.
No, and I think people think we make significantly more money than we do.
Yeah, right. So I had decided, I cleared off my, because I got tired of driving in for one person, which, I'll do it, but geez. But there were plenty of times where I would be on my way in and the office would call me and be like, hey, your 4 o'clock just canceled and rescheduled. And I'm like 5 minutes away.
Right.
That was so frustrating. So I blocked off my Thursday, and a friend of my wife's owns a massage parlor, and she had expanded her space, but she had an empty room that she was willing to rent out to me for $100 a month per day that I was there.
Mm-hmm.
So I finally got up to, when I first started, I started getting people in, but I was fair to the practice in Orlando. So if somebody was calling me from Groveland, Mascot, or Claremont, right, I would direct them to Claremont. If they were calling from, near the Orlando area, I would direct them to Orlando.
Right.
And the practice owner got wind of it, because I was just doing it just to kind of like see what the interest would be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I wasn't seeing that many people, but she kind of got wind of it, and she called me in and she was questioning me. She was kind of beating around the bush until she finally said, so I hear you like open up a spot in Claremont. And I was like, yeah. And she said, so you've been poaching? I was like, no. And I told her what I've been doing.
That's
And,
trauma right there. That's
and then,
happened to me so many times. And it's like, I'm not taking your clients. I just want to do more.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so she told me, she's like, well, we think that your interest is best served in Clermont. I was like, okay. So I said, how long? And she was like, well, we're thinking next Friday. I was like, what about all my clients? She's
Right.
like, we'll take care of them. Okay. But guess what? 95% of my clients found me and they follow me to Clermont.
Of course they do.
That's karma. Isn't
Yeah.
that a bitch?
Yeah.
I would never, like, if someone decided that they did want to be part of Semper Modus, right? Because I have a bunch of practitioners and they're all pretty part-time, so
Yeah.
depending on what their needs are, whatever. If they said, hey, I don't want a contract for you anymore, I'm going to start my own thing, I'm like, great, have fun, do your thing. Like, they're not my clients. I'm not going to kidnap them under my arm just because of my marketing, we received that client. So what?
Yeah. They're the ones that have established a relationship.
Exactly. I didn't.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
that
mean,
never made sense to me.
Right. In my practice, I don't even do I've already forgotten what the stupid thing is because I don't do it. They are free to go whenever they want.
Yes.
Right.
As
But
it should be.
I do have a, in my lease agreement, we have, nobody else can move into the building that's a mental health practice.
Well, that makes sense
So
because you do
if
have.
they want to be in the building next to us, okay.
Oh,
I
you
don't
have a kick-ass office. I wouldn't want anybody moving in next to you either. Like, I've been there. It's amazing. He's got therapy dogs and massage therapists and all kinds of fanciness there in Claremont. It's nice. It's really nice. Yeah.
The therapy dog, he's everybody loves him.
Oh, of course. He's beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, do you train the therapy dogs, or you just have the therapy?
We got super fortunate with Tux. He's got a tuxedo coat, so we call him Tux. And when we went to go meet him, I picked up, like the chocolate ones, and he's a golden doodle. So I picked up the chocolate ones and the white ones and the black ones, and they're all like licking and all this stuff. I put Tux in my lap, and he just kind of like, okay. He just sat there. And we were like, that's what we want. So when I took him to the office, he was, one of my clients came in and just, he jumped up on the couch and like laid in her lap so she could pet him. And she just, took a couple of minutes, but she just calmed down and got to a point where she could actually speak. And so I was like, man, this dog's amazing.
Yeah, he is.
So he goes every day that I'm in the office. He's at the office, and some of the other counselors take him into their sessions with him. And I've had people say, I really like my counselor, but I love Tux.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. I just want to put a plug in for so if somebody needs a service dog, I have a friend who is a Marine veteran that just started his own business, and he trains dogs, and I'm trying to get his name is Michael Parker, and I'm trying to get the name of his business, Devil something. Devil Dog, I think it is. I'm trying to find his text message. Sorry, but anyways, get a hold of me if you need somebody that needs to train a service dog. I have a guy. He's in Bloomington right now. He's currently in Bloomington, Illinois. But I will connect you with Michael. He's a great guy, and he will be on the show eventually too.
Cool.
But yeah, I just since we're talking about service dogs, and Michael is like a brother from another mother. And I can't even figure out why I can't find him. But anyways, connect with me and I'll get you connected with him.
So, John, what is your business called?
Well, actually, I have two now.
Shocking.
The first one is work it out mental health work it out counseling, and the name came from our youngest son because we were trying to figure out what we should call a business, and he was like, "Why don't you call it, work it out?" And we were like, and we're like, "Okay, why?" And he was like, "Well," he said, because many different things. He said, first off, he says, if you're doing any ministry stuff, he says, we're told to work out our own salvation. He said, and when you're in counseling, he says, you have to work out your own solutions. I was like, yeah. He says, and if you're doing personal training, Dad, he says, they have to work out. So we were like,
smart kid you got there.
Boy, you are a genius.
Right? That's
So
amazing.
we did that, and we've been where we're at now. We've been there since 2020. So March 1st, we opened the doors at the office, and everybody knows what happened 2 weeks later. So, but we have never shut our doors. And then just recently, we started up a new one called Heart of Valor Counseling, which is what we're doing is we're reaching out to North Carolina and Virginia a little bit more intensely with that. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I get voicemails that say, I want to see John Cothron. So I just forward them. Here you go, John.
Yeah. And it's funny because I reach out and they don't call back.
I know. Well, I hope they're watching the podcast and you need to call back because he's excellent.
Yes.
So I worked with him some at Shield of Faith Missions, which is a 4-day clinic down there in Tampa. And they serve veterans and first responders. And it's like well, you explain it, John. You spent a lot more time than I did there.
Yeah. So they do a lot of, they do the mental health stuff. They've got an acupuncturist there. They have massage therapy. Oh wow, they have some
Chiropractor.
Chiropractor. They have a sleep specialist to talk to everybody. They've got a couple of other practitioners that deal specifically with like anger management and things like that.
Sometimes they bring in a physical therapist. Yeah.
Yep. And they've got Coach Bob, who is an adaptive golf specialist.
Yep.
So they provide all of those services over the weekend. So for everybody, it starts on Thursday night, runs through Monday morning. But then what they do afterwards is for a following year, everybody has access to what resources, and if they need like the Aura Ring or whatever to help monitor their sleep, the veterans get that. And so
They do heart math, and they have a little tooth that plays nature noises or whatever. So if you're traveling, it's a really small little thing. It's pretty cool. But John and I, we definitely serve some warriors there a couple times actually. I do the female clinics pretty much only.
Right.
But but it's what is it? Physical, spiritual, mental, and something else. I always say cognitive, but I know it's social. Okay, so you get that social piece, but they expanded to like first responders now.
Oh, cool.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah. First responders need help too, from the police to the fire, dispatchers.
Yeah.
Dispatchers hear everything.
Right.
I cannot imagine sitting on, with an earpiece in and making sure somebody's okay until whoever gets there, and you're hearing all the background.
We hear him say hi. Somebody must have come to the door.
No, they hear stuff outside and they just start a bark. There's 4 of them, so
Oh wow, you're outnumbered.
4 in one house.
Well, I'm out. No, it's 4, but we might as well have 5 because the Newfoundland's dang near 200 pounds.
Good Lord!
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of dog.
So what is your primary focus with regard to mental health? Because you're a QS. What is a QS?
Qualified supervisor.
Which
So,
means?
which means that all my interns get supervision from me. And they have to have 1 hour of supervision for every 15 hours of direct client contact. So, and my main thing with the supervision is getting them to get to the root of whatever the issue is. Like, when did that start?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's gotten to the point now where they're like, okay, well, this is this client, blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, so what do we do? And they're like, we get to the root of it. There you go. So,
Yep.
let's discuss how we're going to get to the root.
Yeah, I talk about different trauma symptoms and what other people call triggers. Is, when did this first happen that you felt this way? Because when the meatloaf is
Yep.
cold and you throw the dining room table at the kitchen window, it's not because the meatloaf is cold.
Right.
So I kind of go make them backtrack and say, okay, that was when your anger was a level 1, and then all of these things happen to get you to a level 10.
Yep.
It's just like the subjective unit of distress, just done a little differently.
Yeah. And you had asked about my focus with mental health. Mostly, well, not mostly. I mean, I still deal with like anxiety, depression, all that stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of specific trauma
Mm-hmm.
stuff with people to get them through to where they can deal with what's going on today, as opposed to like, I need to hide in my house. And one of the things I do, which kind of you've tweaked some stuff that we've learned, and so the what the heck did we call it? EMP, the
Yeah.
emotions management process.
Yeah.
I've taken that, but I changed it a little bit. I kind of changed the M to an R.
Don't give your secrets out.
So it's not a secret, but I get them to, like, basically, especially if it's childhood trauma,
Mm-hmm.
to, imagine being back as a bystander in that first event.
Mm-hmm.
And then because the person who was supposed to be protecting the child did not,
Right.
they step in and protect the child.
Right.
And then the biggest thing that's helped the majority of my clients like get past all that, out of proportion behavior is have them bring the child back with them when
Right.
they come back to today. And I just kind of I set the parameters for them, but some of them have even gone beyond that, and just because the brain will automatically find the solution that's best for them. So now one of my clients even imagined walking out of the house with his 5 or 6 year old self and shutting the door behind him.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, cool.
It's powerful.
And I didn't tell him to do that, and now that particular individual, his ability to deal with stressors today, he's like, no, instead of shutting down, he's just like, okay, so what do I need to do here? I've got this, and this option. Bam.
That is
So
awesome.
I love hearing that. But you talked a little bit earlier about the fear within the CEOs of private practice, where they're just so hyper focused on losing clients or, someone leaving them or whatever.
right.
Like you and I have never had that competitive thing.
No.
Because we both know that there's 325 million people that could benefit from counseling.
Yes.
Like there's the military being 3% of that population is still significant enough.
Right. And if you truly care about people, right, you have to realize that you individually might not be the best fit for that person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anytime
I get fired, I send them to you. John knows.
Yes. Oh, I know.
It's all good. And you've
Yeah.
done, you sent me people. You're like, this is above my pay grade. I'm like, okay, but not so much now because you're getting your own doctorate because you've
Yeah.
lost your grade officially, or no?
What was that?
You said because you've lost your mind officially, or no?
Oh, I haven't lost it yet. Wait till the dissertation phase, and then I might.
Just look, what they ask you to correct, just do it. Whatever your chair says, just do it. That's
yeah.
what I learned. At the end of the day, if you fight them, you will lose.
Right. Yeah, because they hold the reins of power.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. Now, I had initially wanted to do neuropsychology, but guess what that requires? For you to actually sit in class, you cannot do it online. And I don't have time to travel to either the east or west coast of Florida to attend class.
Right.
So
UCF doesn't have it, huh?
Nope.
Okay.
So I decided to go to Liberty University and pursue a PhD in developmental psychology.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah,
Because
we're at the same university. What's ironic is it's in Virginia.
Yeah.
But you don't need to be hands-on there. We did the hands-on work already.
Yep. And I still do the hands-on work pretty much every day.
Right. So as far as your dissertation, like what's your ETA?
I think I have one more semester of classes. So in the spring, and then after that, we'll start the dissertation phase.
Yeah, you have up to 7 years to finish it, but also they schedule you about 5 semesters.
Right.
Just for the dissertation, because it's waiting on that chair to get back to you with the corrections that you need to make is the most daunting part.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to take 7 years.
Talk about this later, but yeah.
Right.
For those of the people that are listening to this, now they know how long it takes.
So what's your plan with this PhD?
Well, the plan is maybe, it's just kind of depends. Maybe do some, some adjunct professor type stuff. So teach some people. Who knows? Maybe they'll even invite me for a TED Talk at some point. I don't know.
I love learning from you, so I'd be thrilled if you were, professor. That's amazing.
I have a lot of ideas when it comes to things just kind of hit me. And sometimes it's funny because I'll watch movies and I'll have to pause it and be like, oh, that's genius. So seriously, perfect example. There's a movie with Ryan Reynolds, dude's awesome, called The Atom Project.
Yes.
And in one scene, Ryan Reynolds, his 12-year-old self, had time traveled back to a time when their dad is still alive.
Right.
And Ryan Reynolds is really angry with the dad, so he gets frustrated and walks out of the room. And then dad's like, hey, I got to go home to you and your mom. So like, oh, that's weird. But the kid comes out and he goes, why are you so angry at dad? And Ryan Reynolds' character starts going through this list of stuff. And the kid's like, he goes, what are you talking about? He said, that didn't happen. And he was like, what do you mean? So he tells him what happened. He was like, why don't I remember it like that? And this is where every once in a while, the writers in Hollywood just hit the nail on the head. The kid, like Sammy says, I think you're angry because it's easier to be angry than it is to be sad.
Yes.
Ooh.
And when he said that, I literally paused and I was like, wait a minute. If I'm embarrassed, if somebody does something that's embarrassing to me, I get mad.
Yes.
And if I'm disappointed, like, my kids bring home a bad grade from school and I'm really disappointed, I'm mad at them, right? Because you're not putting forth an effort, right? So, being sad, being embarrassed, being disappointed, pretty much any emotion that we have, it's kind of hard to be mad if you're happy, but, all of the ones that are termed negative emotions, right? We can get mad. But the problem isn't the fact that we're mad about something. The problem is, how are we portraying the fact? How are we verbalizing the fact that we're mad?
How are we behaving? Yeah,
Yeah.
because emotions are not negative or positive. It's the behavior that follows the emotion,
Correct.
which is negative or positive.
Right. But everybody attributes it to an emotion.
And they label it as a negative emotion. So I can
Right.
sit here and be like, I am pissed off, but I'm not doing anything.
Right.
That doesn't make it a negative emotion. My behavior in throwing this lamp across the room is absolutely negative.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And and the that's the thing. Most people have a default for when they're angry. They have a default term, pissed off, for example,
Right.
without realizing that, okay, I'm just annoyed, but whenever you start talking about being pissed off, your body physiologically says, oh, okay,
Yeah.
here we go.
Yeah.
Right. And
Because
you get that.
the
Yep.
labels attribute to the behavior. Yeah. So
Yeah.
with developmental psychology, I want to ask you one last question, and then Dorothy will ask you.
Okay.
What have you learned in the doctoral program that you didn't learn in the mental health master's program that was profoundly just rocked your world?
Oh boy.
And you decided this is exactly where I need to be.
Wow. That's a really good question because right now the course that I'm in is the brain and behavior.
Yes.
So that has my interest peaked because it's going through the, it's in so much detail. It feels complicated, but when you talk about just how everything operates, it's not that complicated. All
No.
the inner workings and everything, this neuron and that neuron and how many neurons are firing for this and all that other stuff, that's complicated. But just the overall process, it's not.
No, the brain, idea, action. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But breaking
And
it down like that with all these complicated emotions. I mean, you've seen what is it, the emotions wheel, right? We ask little kids, okay, which one is yours? Because it's hard. And even what's interesting is I find developmental psychology speaking, I find it interesting to me that grown men really struggle with saying the emotion that they feel, like putting an actual label on it,
right.
and sometimes when you ask them, okay, were you embarrassed? Yeah, that's it. I was embarrassed. And it was a breakthrough and a revelation for them because they've never labeled how they felt in a moment that
Right.
caused them such distress. I
Yeah.
find that very fascinating. And I think
And,
that goes
and
along
they're
with
usually, the reaction is usually out of proportion for what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. Because they're level 10.
Yep. Well, and one thing that I do ask them is, I'll ask one of two people. If somebody's like, oh, my husband, my child, my adult child, this is what they do, right? Or if it's an individual themselves, like, yeah, I'm out of proportion. I'm like, okay, so in that moment, how old are you feeling?
Yes.
And they go, and they have to think, and they like a teenager. Like, okay, so about how old teenager? 14, 15. Like, all right, what was going on in your life around that time?
Yep.
And that usually, they're like, oh yeah, we moved from Boston to Atlanta, Georgia, and I didn't know anybody.
Yep.
Like, okay.
Exactly. It is. And, there's a lot of people that talk about, abusive partners. They talk about
Right.
their behavior in the moment that the other person is feeling abused, whether it's man or woman, it's irrelevant because it's pretty even. I
Yes.
will say that. So, whether it's a man or a woman and they're cussing and they're screaming and they're hollering and they're throwing things, it's like, oh, he's throwing a temper tantrum or she's throwing a temper tantrum. And people don't realize like that comes from childhood trauma.
Yeah.
That is not what's happening right now, but they behave in the way.
Right.
Because that's how old they feel. So you're spot on with that.
Yeah. And then when somebody tells them they're having a temper tantrum, that just makes it worse.
Well, you're not supposed to know. I tell the partner that in the session, not necessarily like, hey, call them out on their behavior right now, because that's a great idea. No, that would never happen. Yeah. It would be very, very bad for me to do.
And also encourage people to don't get personal when it comes to, don't call each other names.
No.
Like the "you are" type of stuff.
Or like, you need to. It's terrible. Albert Ellis calls it masturbations, not masturbation, masturbation. Let me clarify. He talks about absolute language, and I'm going to write a book on this called Change Your Language, Change Your Life. I actually haven't written, but I'm waiting on my dissertation just because it further cements, the traumatology doctorate will definitely cement everything I got going on. But yes, Dorothy, you'll get an autographed copy and you can just launch it wherever you want to. My media queen over here. But a big thing with the language is need, ought, should, must. None of that language encourages effective communication in any way, shape, or form. Yep. So that's a lot of the counseling I do is shifting that language to more gentle, more, and it's like, well, I don't want to walk on eggshells with my extreme taker, narcissist, whatever they want to label the person as. Not saying they're diagnosed. It's just how they feel and what they've read on the media. Because you and I know that narcissistic personality disorder is not diagnosed very often because true individuals who struggle with that personality disorder don't get help until the pain is bad enough. They do get help when the pain is bad enough, but and that's pretty much when they run out of supply.
And to your point with the shoulds and the musts and all that, something I learned from the Army marksmanship team, believe it or not, is there are certain words that the brain doesn't recognize as actionable.
Yes.
So like, I'll try.
Yes.
No, you're not.
You do.
Don't. Right. Like when we're teaching privates to shoot, and they're jerking on the trigger and we start yelling, don't jerk the trigger. The brain's registering, oh, jerk the trigger. But if you tell them what's the correct way to like squeeze the trigger, you get better results.
Yeah. Or if they're in harm's way, stop. Our brain recognizes stop. But Albert Ellis is rational emotive behavioral therapy. It's one of the that was the first modality I got certified in because I had to change my own language and my own behaviors. So I find it very fascinating how we definitely gravitate toward things that help us first.
True.
100%.
Yeah. So, Miss Dorothy, you have a question for Mr. John.
Yes. And we always usually ask this question at the end here.
Okay.
So, John, what is the one thing no one knows about you?
The one thing no one knows about me?
Yeah.
Ugh. Good grief. I'm not even sure because if I haven't told them, I know my wife has. Wow. The one thing that nobody knows. Man. Yeah, I'm really not sure how to answer that question because I'm not sure what nobody doesn't know.
What is something you like to do that not a lot of people know that you like to do that?
I do like to study my Bible. Specifically, I really like to dig into the Hebrew language because there is so much there that we don't know. and this is actually a really good example. I forget what the word is in Hebrew for rage, but when you break it down by the ancient phonetic characters in Hebrew, it literally breaks down to what happens when there is no father.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah. And then, think about the violent criminals in prison. What do most of them have in common?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's Za'am or ZA''AM. Is that right?
Yeah. And then and then on the other side of it, the Hebrew word for terror is what happens when there's no mother. So it gives me a deep, when somebody comes in, they're like seriously anxious about stuff, like, okay. And I just, get going with them. I don't, make any assumptions, but 9 out of 10 of them, they have a problem with mom.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
Well, most of our issues stem from our parents, or lack of parents.
Yeah, I do meet people who, their traumas were developed with their first relationship, and it was because the spouse or the partner had a terrible childhood.
Right.
So, and they weren't accustomed to any of this until they joined in that relationship.
Right. Yeah, I'm probably like my first wife, but
We don't label anybody on the show, sir.
Oh, okay.
I'm just.
Well, I was married to her for 3 years, so I can.
Okay, hold on. We got to put this up. We got to put this disclaimer up now. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Hold on. The disclaimer is, although we do our best on this show to bring you genuine, authentic guests, we cannot and do not take responsibility for views, hostility, or comments made by our guests that may affect others, unnamed or otherwise. Anything said by others on this program is just their experiences. So, putting that disclaimer out there again.
Oh, you've got a cat.
Yes, this is Mr. Shadow.
Oh, yeah, I can tell.
He's all black. I mean, all black. Like there's no spots on him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He's a
very pretty.
The SPCA. And then I was worried about having just one cat because he had been in a room with 30. And so I went up to the counter and they're like, oh, he has a biological sister, and she's at PetSmart. So we had to go over to PetSmart to get Sabrina and I. She's been on the show before. Her and I went over to PetSmart and just picked up Luna, and Luna's all gray. So she has the same eyes. Yeah, they were like, siblings or whatever. So, they're pretty wonderful. They've been watching the storm. So I had to close the curtain because the doors started moving.
Yeah.
And the cats are looking at me like, you going to fix this? It's like, no. So, yeah, it was super fun. So,
John, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's an absolute pleasure getting to know you.
Thank you for letting me be here.
Absolutely. Where's the best place for people to get a hold of you?
They can, you've got the crawler on the screen, and they can get on the website there. They can call our office phone is 407-949-0214. And we have a great receptionist. Her name is Mylene. And she can help them out with whatever they need and get them moving in the right direction for a therapist.
Email.
But if they go to the website, they can look at all the bios for all the therapists in the office.
Okay.
Love that. Thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of our people that were watching the show tonight, and those of you on the replay. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Unstoppable Overcomers. And we'll see you same time, same channel next week. Bye for now, guys.